Well, folks, before we get any further, we got to play this.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
We're talking about the playoffs. Despite what happened today, we are talking playoffs in some shape or form. It's happening, Bears fans. Welcome into the Hurry Up Recap from the Bearfront Podcast. I'm Steven Johnson. He is Nick Bidding. Nick, I tell you, it felt good to start. Then it felt bad. And then it felt like, oh, they might actually be able to hang in this. And then it all just fell apart.
It's kind of what you expected. We talked last week. If we were going to win this game, it was going to be on the back of David Montgomery and Mitch playing complimentary football. And the Packers just kind of decided to shut down David Montgomery, and Mitch can't play complimentary football because, yet again, he runs into a good team and can't step up. That was the pathway for the Bears to win, and he didn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that went into this game. There was a lot. I can't imagine setting this at the feet of one or two people in particular. Although I know the two that the majority of Bears fans out there, I'm sure, are ready and willing to set this at the feet of are one Matt Nagy and Chuck Pagano for the games that they called today. Because if it wasn't apparent to begin with, Matt Nagy's calling plays again. I mean, that had Matt Nagy stank written all over it today, no matter how you look at it. And it's funny because Ian Rappaport came out with a report earlier today saying he was getting more involved, and it didn't entirely feel like he had like an entire grip on it. And we had talked about this a little bit, where you're going to obviously have the head coach involved in some shape or form. In what universe does an offensive coordinator go out there and call a game?
Hey, Bill, what did you come up with this week? Don't worry about it.
Who the hell are you?
He's just doing the Travolta gif of like wandering around aimlessly in Hallis Hall. What do I do now?
But this week it felt different, and not in a good way. For everything that has happened. I mean, there was just time and time again, you saw the same exact plays. You saw Mitch not really taking off. I mean, there's one comment already with this that you didn't really see him taking off. It was more of pocket passer Mitch, which time and time again we have seen is not the greatest thing.
Not good
on the face of the earth. I lost count at the number of times where Mitch threw to Cole Kmet in the flat on an end around, and just like all these stupid little plays where like, I'm having deja vu. Did this not already happen 3 times? And I don't know.
I get that. I do. But here's the thing. If Nagy's had a hand in game planning, which he's going to have, we talked about this in via text before the game. Of course, he's going to be in the meeting room helping game plan. Hey, maybe look this, maybe even during the game. Hey, Bill, like, we're 4 down territory here. Be calling plays on third, planning for fourth. Or, hey, down on the field here, it looks like play X, Y, or Z might click. I'm seeing something down here. Yeah, he's going to have a hand in it. I just think it's one of those eye of the beholder things where we kind of talked about this a little bit a week ago and 2 weeks ago. The Bears' dysfunction right now is you don't know who to give credit to. If you don't like Matt Nagy, when something goes wrong, it's Nagy's fault. When something goes well, it's Bill Lazor calling the plays and being this genius because Nagy stepped away. It's one of those. It's eye of the beholder. Now that stuff isn't working, well, obviously Nagy's back because things are going awry. Can we just call it what it was? If the Bears ran into a more talented football team and kind of crap the bed? Can it be that simple?
But personally, I feel like both things could be true, because we did see some differences in the game this week versus what we've seen really in a 3-game stretch. So let's go back 2 games prior to the week where
who gets credit for the opening drive where the Bears went right down the field and scored. Like, that's what I'm saying is like the first drive went great. And then
the first drive did go great because they leaned on the run. I mean, to take up half of the first quarter and you only had to move 60 yards. I mean, that in itself is a feat. I still don't understand how they managed to do that, because that's really unheard of in a lot of circles, because they leaned on the run game. They didn't worry about allowing Mitch to be the guy to get down the field. And I mean, all of a sudden it was like, oh crap, the Packers scored quickly. We need to change things up. And you saw more. And yes, the Montgomery injury did factor into all this. Obviously,
it felt like the Bears blinked a little bit too.
They did.
It felt like as soon as the Packers scored, and there was that turnover battle where the Bears got the ball off that Packers fumbled punt, only got a touch or only got a field goal out of it, and then the Kmet fumble. It feels like at that point the Bears blinked and panicked. And I don't think it's an issue of Nagy taking over play calling. I think the team just panicked because on the other side you have one of the probably 5 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, and he tore you up again. And I know people want to lay this at Pagano's feet, but the garbage touchdown is what it is. This Bears team has been scoring 30 points the last few weeks. This Packers defense allegedly wasn't that great. This Bears team should have been able to get to over 20 points, and they didn't. And whether we want to lay that at Nagy's feet or Lazer's feet, that's fine. But I just feel it's a convenient argument one way or the other. Next week, if the Bears offense looks great against the Saints, who's calling plays? Like, is Nagy involved?
Yeah. I get the argument there. I do get the argument there. It is one of those things where we're really never going to know either. That's always going to be an unknown. It's never something that they're going to tell their hand at, because the Bears, for all purposes related to football, are terrible honesty PR people.
Everyone tighter than the CIA.
It's always been that way. And there's a couple different things that obviously didn't go the way that the Bears anticipated them to. Like you said, they blinked. Roquan Smith going out with the elbow injury was catastrophic to what the defense needed to do, because Josh Woods is not a good football player, as we saw today, as he was caught out of position numerous times and was exploited. The same thing with Duke Shelley. I mean, Aaron Rodgers went after Duke Shelley with a vengeance today.
Wouldn't you?
Yes.
I like Duke Shelley, but if you're going to pick on a guy, it's going to be that guy.
Right. Yes. It was painful to watch at times, needless to say. However, it all just kind of snowballed. And you mentioned, not being able to necessarily place it at Chuck Pagano's feet for the defensive performance. To an extent, I do agree, because when you're stuck with Duke Shelley, Kindle Vildor, and Josh Woods playing meaningful minutes in a must-win game to finish your regular season, there's not many coaches that are going to go out there and have these fantastic results. But yet again, as we saw, and yes, we can argue about, are certain players getting held. The defensive line did not bring the pressure on a consistent basis that, again, has not come time and time again this year. And that's a very concerning thing, regardless of who your opponent is heading into these playoffs. And the Bears, thankfully, going to be playing a New Orleans team here, which they did come close to beating in the regular season. We don't know what type of team we're necessarily going to get. It's probably going to be a stronger team than what the Bears saw earlier in the year. Michael Thomas, more than likely, coming off the IR. Since it's a Sunday game, Alvin Kamara will be eligible to come off the COVID list, which is a huge turn of events. And then Drew Brees, who, again, not the Drew Brees of old, but still a guy who is playoff tested and has his full complement of offensive weapons. And so
you just named a Hall of Famer and 2 All-Pros.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that's yeah. But I mean,
guys to have back. I get the defensive thing where we were down guys, but some of what Green Bay was doing schematically is the same thing we saw the first time around. Where how on God's green earth, and this is something I will hold Pagano's feet to the fire. How constantly do we have do we have Green Bay Packer wide receivers matched up man on man with our linebackers?
Danny Trevathan.
Every single time. Like it's amazing. I don't know whether to blame give the Packers credit for scheming amazingly well or blame Pagano for constantly running a scheme that somehow gets Trevathan or Woods matched up on Devontae Adams or Alan Lazard.
Oh, or MVS, Valdez Scantling on that.
Yeah, that
touchdown.
one. That one would be a good one.
I mean, my God. Like in no shape or form should that even happen, regardless of who your personnel is that you have to work with. That should never happen. And it happened numerous times. It's really, say your prayers that Jalen Johnson can come back next weekend, because if they can't, I mean, it's going to be Emmanuel Sanders, it's going to be Michael Thomas, it's going to be Traquan Smith. The weapons are going to unload yet again on this Bears secondary, and it's not going to be pretty by any means. Can
you imagine what the Saints are thinking right now if they get Thomas back, moving him around the field, matching him up with Shelley, moving him around the field? It's just we're probably a little bit ahead of ourselves for the preview next week. This week, and I didn't mean to put it all on Mitch's feet at the beginning of the beginning of this, but at the end of the day, in games like this, you need like a dude to step up. I keep talking about that, where at some point Mitch needs to step up against these type of teams and like play like a dude, and he didn't. It took him 42 passes to throw for 250 yards. He should have been picked off 3 times. And I'm not one for almost interceptions. There's a difference between like a tipped ball and drilling a guy in the chest with the ball. It's just Mitch wasn't good today. And and Steven, I will bring it back to my suffering on New Year's Day watching Alabama and Notre Dame. In order for Notre Dame to compete, Ian Book needed to be great. He needed to be Ian Book versus Clemson the first time. In order for the Bears to compete today, more than likely, Mitch had to be great. Ian Book wasn't great, and Notre Dame had no shot. Mitch wasn't great, and the Bears had no shot for the most part. Sometimes it's not that simple, but a lot of times, like, the world of football revolves around that position. That's why we suffer so much, because we don't have that lockdown.
Right. And I mean, that's just the way that it is. And with this, because it got to a point in the third quarter there, really I don't know if it was the third or the fourth quarter, but when they converted the 2 fourth downs, I think it was the fourth quarter, when they converted the 2 fourth downs, and then on the 4th and 1, they do the rollout pass to Allen Robinson, which was never open, ever open.
Jimmy Graham was open backside of it, though.
Oh, man,
over the top, Graham. You had a shot with Graham there that he just stared down the A-Rob, and Graham had if he had seen that, Graham had a shot.
But here's the thing: is the fact that you gave the ball to Montgomery, and then you just ran the quarterback sneak, and you picked him up like it was no big deal, and you had the same exact scenario, and really, it's trying to best yourself, and really you're outplaying yourself mentally,
yes,
and overthinking it, and all you had to do was run it up their throat to pick up a yard. Just give it to Monty. That's all you had to do. It would have been better than whatever the hell that was. And they don't rely on their strengths. They ran away from the run game when they most needed it. It was one of the things that we talked about during our preview last week, and saying that they need to focus on staying with the run game, and they didn't. And that cost them the opportunity to turn it into a 1-score game. Yeah, you can argue that the Packers went down the field and scored a touchdown, but I mean, the scenario changes significantly. And you mentioned like the what ifs and the interceptions. Like Aaron Rodgers, despite having a fantastic day, out of his 5 incompletions, you could argue that 3 of them should have been interceptions.
And I get that. It's easy to back up with 4 touchdowns, though. Like that's the thing, is like you can't throw. Here's the thing: is even if Rodgers on his 4 or 5 incompletions, almost those 3 picks, he still throw 4 touchdowns. If you're Mitch, you can't almost throw 3 interceptions and throw 0 touchdowns and produce 0 points. Like I get almost interceptions happen to everyone, but they're more glaring when you're not offering anything to offset them. Like
Fair.
it's one thing to try to squeeze a ball into tight coverage, and you're like, that was really close. It's another thing to drill a guy in the chest in the end zone, drill another guy in the chest on the out route to Robinson, which was never open, and then throw a horrendous one to Komet. Like that's my thing. Is like they're not all equal either. But what I will say, and what I'll back you up on, is in that situation where Mitch rolls out and they call that rollout to A-Rob. Maybe I'm speaking for you too much here, but I would think if the Bears run there and they get stuffed, where at least, you know what, they tried to do it with their strength and it didn't work, and you tip your cap, and it's frustrating and it hacks you off because you want the Bears to win and you want to convert there, but at least you can say, hey, they danced with who they brought to the dance and it wasn't good enough. Okay, cool. That situation, they felt like they outthought themselves and tried to get too cute and do something off schedule that was the exact opposite of what had worked the two previous times.
Yeah. I mean,
like you're gonna be pissed off if they don't convert it, but you're at least okay. Hey, it had been working. They tried it again and it didn't work this time. Like I at least see the logic. That one just made no sense.
Right. It's literally, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, that's literally what it was. That's literally what it still is the running game has continued to work for the Bears. And it's funny because at the beginning of the broadcast, it was shot after shot about what the Bears offense was doing, what the Bears offense has been doing in this whole turnaround, and how they've leaned more on the run game and what it's done and what David Montgomery has done. Again, it feels so damn simple and so obvious that it is something that they should have done, they could have kept up with, and they just didn't. And it scares the living hell out of me heading into next week, because I'm back in a state of I don't know what to expect in terms of this offense and what they're willing or not willing to do when it comes to certain situations. If they do find themselves down 7 points or 14 points, are they literally going to go pass? Because it sure feels like that right now based off of what we saw today.
And that's when we were talking about the Bears panicked. That's when they panicked. Is you stopped leaning on the run because it felt like, oh crap, Green Bay scored. We didn't take advantage of this turnover and plus territory. Now we're down. Now we need to somehow play. Now we need to go shot for shot with Aaron Rodgers. And that's not a recipe for success. Now maybe that's not what they intended, but I'm just saying from watching the game, that's what it felt like. It was a panic maneuver, and now it's like, okay, now we have to play shootout with Aaron Rodgers, which you don't want to do. You're not built for that, right? And it's not going to work. And we know the reasons it won't work. It felt like watching the game. All of a sudden, it was, oh no, like what? Why aren't we staying with the run? Why aren't we shortening this game, giving them less possessions? And it just felt kind of like this grind. And weird enough, Green Bay allowed us to stay in it for a long time, doing dumb things. But we kept pounding our head in the wall, trying to get in a shootout with this guy, and that's not how you beat Green Bay right now. It's just not.
And it's not just that, but still on that 4th and 1 play, the fact that they left the potential 3 points on the field and keeping it a close game, it's like, what more do you need? And yes, they traded several touchdowns for field goals in this game. The muffed punt, where it obviously should have been producing a touchdown, but the offense went nowhere. They fumbled a golden opportunity to put 7 points on the board. And again, it was just time and time again that the Bears continued to settle for 3 points. And unfortunately, that's kind of been the MO for the Bears for a long time, where they get to the red zone and they just fall apart. I don't get it. I don't understand why it's such a big deal. But again, we saw the same thing here today, where there were 2 or 3 separate drives that should have been extended, but the offense just couldn't get it done.
And when you're playing a better team, you need to take full advantage of those opportunities. And,
right.
And I think we talked in our preview. the pathway to the Bears winning this game, turn the Packers over to lean on the run and take advantage of those opportunities. And the Packers allowed you to do that.
Right.
They gave you an opportunity or two here or there. We didn't take advantage of it. And it just, you have to. You can't be a worse football team, play a team that good, and then give you those openings and you get 3 points out of it. You just can't. You're not going to win the football game.
And it's just the aggravating thing that, all these keys were available. It's not like it was some imaginary fairy that isn't there. Like, these were all very potential things that the Bears could have done, and they didn't do them. And again, and now after, feeling for lack of a better word or phrase, let down by a performance that could have been immensely better against a team that's actually good, we're sitting here in a position in a 7 seed because the Arizona Cardinals could not put up more than 7 points against a Rams team that was starting John Wolford at quarterback. I mean, just, my God. I've never felt so empty over a playoff appearance.
I kept forgetting we had made the playoffs. We backed ourselves into the playoffs, and I don't care at all. Like, all I care about is big picture stuff. And this is probably way, way off topic, but this is a thought I had big picture wise is I love, like, David Montgomery has converted me. I think he's a quality NFL running back. The way he plays, that's a short window for a running back like that, unless you're a freak. So now you're in the big picture thing of, look, if you think this is the dude, you have like another 3 years of this. And
I don't even know if there's that.
You better get your stuff together, because I like David Montgomery, but the style of football he plays, it has a shelf life. And typically in the NFL, a running back shelf life isn't long to begin with. Definitely not one that plays like him. I like the way he plays, but that's just the reality of the situation. So, look, this playoff berth is cool, and we'll do the preview and talk about how the Bears are going to lose and all that good stuff later. But I don't know what it means. And if it saved Nagy and Pace's job, God help us. Because, like, Lovie Smith got fired after going 10-6. We backed into the playoffs at 8-8, and you're going to say this saved jobs?
And that's the whole thing that I kind of am concerned about. This is what part of that performance makes you feel confident about this core, and not just Nagy and Pace, but even thinking about bringing Trubisky back as your quarterback next year. I mean, again, and we've talked about this, is the fact that Mitch likes to beat up on the not so great teams. And then when it comes to playing these teams that are playoff contenders and actually have solid records, we see things like we saw today. And it doesn't it doesn't give any hope, really. I mean, do you bring him back on like a transition tag where you can match any offer? I mean, do you say, see you later? I mean, do you deal with full?
You do that one. You do the second one.
I mean, there's so many different avenues for this team to take, and it is just a lot of fear. I think fear is the right word, that the ownership group is going to enable these type of performances as being okay because they got to the playoffs.
If at the end of the year I hear, well, we made it to the playoffs, so it was a good year, I will freak out, like legitimately freak out offline. Like, I hope we don't live stream that because I will freak out, like, live on the air. Like, it's not like there's nothing. You're probably not going to have Allen Robinson next year. I feel like he doesn't want to be here. So you're going to bring Mitch back on a transition tag to see this garbage again? Like, what are we doing? Like, where's this leading? Even if the Bears win a playoff game, we're not winning the Super Bowl. Like, there's nothing about this team that screams Super Bowl. And then on top of that, Steven, you have the issue where hypothetically Nagy has saved his job, Pace is gone. Then you bring in a new GM. Nagy's essentially a lame duck because he's not the GM's choice for head coach. So now you've set your organization back another season until this GM probably wants to bring in his own guy to run the team. who knows who that GM or new coach is going to want at quarterback. It's just we're in this ridiculous cycle of garbage where we can't sync up. Like, just the house needs to be cleaned. Like, I don't want to see this lame duck coach stuff next year.
Well, yeah, because I mean, as we all know, that went really well when Emery was here, in the year that he was here when Lovey was floating around.
Or the Angelo Duran stuff. As soon as Angelo came in,
right.
You knew Duran was gone.
Right. It's a common pattern, and that's kind of the concern here is, are we really going to just get the status quo and not line up all our ducks in a row to see a full house cleaning and stack everything like a franchise should be in terms of building a front office? Like, that's the concern, and that's the worry, is that it's not going to be seen. And again, we're sitting here with an 8-8 record. We're staring at an 8-8 record for the second consecutive year. So let's not forget that last year, when everybody was so angry about this team, we're the same record. It's the same thing. The only difference is the NFL chose to add a 7th playoff seed. Yep. That's the only difference between this year and last year. And to me, it shouldn't signal this team showed improvement.
Well, that's the crazy thing, Stephen, is hypothetically, and I know we live in the real world, but if this is last year repeated again and we miss the playoffs, do you think Nagy's coming back? Do you think Pace has saved his job at all? If this team misses the playoffs again at 8-8 has shown zero improvement, I have a hard time believing that if this Bears team, if we lived in a world where there was still only 6 playoff spots, that if this Bears team missed the playoffs this year in this manner that we did, I have a real hard time believing both those guys are back. And if
I'd agree.
If the freaky 7th seed has saved these guys a job, that's ridiculous. Like this, the end product doesn't matter.
Would it surprise you at all?
No, of course not. This organization's a joke, and we talked about this, Adam Johns, weeks ago. Is what does this organization need to do to look at an organization like the Steelers or the Ravens or some of these legacy franchises and fix this? This organization is a joke. Like, it is. If this season saved these 2 guys' jobs, that's ridiculous. And if they fire Pagano as a sacrificial lamb again, that's ridiculous, because this defense was still good enough to win more than 8 games. If anyone looks at this year and says the defense is the reason this team underperformed, they're liars and they're insane. This lays at the feet of Nagy and Pace and the offense being terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good summarization. And again, we don't know what this team is necessarily going to look like come Sunday with the injuries that they endured as well. We really didn't hear much of anything about Roquan Smith during the game, let alone after the game. I mean, just that's
the fact concerning.
Yes, 100% it is. We don't know if Jalen Johnson is going to come back on Sunday. Darnell Mooney dealing with an injury there towards the end of the game as well. I mean, there were just a few key pieces there where it all comes out to being a very big concern for the bigger picture, where the Bears are getting unhealthy at the wrong time and the Saints are getting healthy at the right time. That's ultimately what this game is coming down to. But thankfully, we get to watch it on slime cams on Nickelodeon on Sunday afternoon.
Like, put it in spooky vision, like with the "Are You Afraid of the Dark" intro, and with like the fire and all that kind of stuff. Like that would be awesome.
I mean, if there's one thing I was excited about when I saw it, I'm just like, I saw the commercials promoting it. I'm like, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. And then the Bears get the announcement that they're going to be playing on CBS and Amazon and Nickelodeon, and I'm like, I'm going to watch this on Nickelodeon, because I'm probably going to need something to keep my attention for longer than listening to Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, more or less, get me through some type of misery.
For all
of
the
whatever.
people our age watching on Nickelodeon, they should air all the old commercials, like the Ecto Cooler commercials and the Crossfire commercials and all those old retro toy commercials, just because they know a bunch of people our age will be watching the game. Here's the thing. Could the Bears pull one out of their hat next week? Yeah, sure, whatever. But the thing is, and we kind of talked about this at one point during the year, is none of this really matters. Is the big picture stuff now is what's most important, because this team's not going anywhere. And
right.
The one hope that you had of this team maybe could go somewhere is if they showed up today in this game and performed like a team that, hey, yeah, no, we're for real. It was an off-kilter season. It was crazy, but we showed up today and played our butts off and did something really, really special. They didn't do that. The offense was terrible. The defense wasn't what it needed to be, and it just kind of stunk. It was just kind of the Bears you kind of expected to show up but didn't want to show up.
Right. And that's, just what really we've had to live with as Bears fans for quite some time. It's just like the slow morphing thing. And there's two comments here with Jeremiah on YouTube. You mentioned the health. I realized it has not everything is health related. Yes, the Saints are better coached. Yes, they're better prepared. We get that. We know that Sean Payton is a better NFL coach. No one is going to argue that. The way that the Saints come in, they have been screwed by the NFL numerous times in the playoffs. Would it shock me to see him get screwed again, especially against a dumpster fire like what the Bears are currently heading into the playoffs with? Not at all. I get that, but there is that small point where their injuries will play a small piece, even though regardless of whatever happens with these two teams, the Saints will always be the more talented team, the better coached team, and there is no reason they should lose this game on Sunday.
I mean,
point blank, plain and simple.
Health isn't the reason the Saints will win. They're a more talented team, but it would also help the Bears' cause if Breeze, Kamara, and Thomas weren't playing. Like, the Bears would have more of a shot of winning the game if those three guys weren't playing. That's just, being real. But, those three guys playing doesn't help the Bears' chances at all.
Right. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, honestly, Bears fans enjoy the ride. Like, if the Bears end up winning a playoff game, that means it's a Green Bay rematch at Lambeau Field. I don't know if necessarily anybody wants to relive what we've seen in the two games so far between the Bears and the Packers, but it is a potential matchup if there is the upset there in New Orleans and the Bears can start rolling on the road. It's, again, one of those just strange things where it's like, enjoy it. Like, don't be mad if the Bears crap the bed, because for all franchise related purposes, really, I mean, it's they shouldn't be here right now. No. Based on what has happened, they should not be here. The reason they are here is because they got the 7th seed, something that did not exist before 2020. 2020 gave us a lot of crap. This is one of them.
It was 2020's final gift to us Bears fans. Like, here, take this. Remember us always.
You don't get a lower playoff seed. You get to go to the playoffs.
It's like the crazy ex that leaves her stuff at your place. Just like, here, I left you this T-shirt. I bought you this gun rack.
This is the thing, too, where if they do beat the Saints, that means that the worst that they're going to draft would then be 25.
Kyle Trask.
So think about this, is that if we're sitting here a month and a half ago talking about, there's still a path to a top 10 pick. There's still the possibility the Bears could be picking at 25 with this roster, and that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
That is bad. Like,
now we're in, no offense, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask territory with that.
Oh, don't give me Trask. No.
He looked great the other night. Just interception. It actually would look very familiar. It would be very Bearsy. Like, just pick the guy who had the very Bearsy went pro. It's just I don't want. I always hate getting big picture because there's still a game left, but I just feel like this game doesn't matter. Like the Bears aren't going to run off and go win the Super Bowl. And if they pull a couple out of nowhere, Trubisky's still not the guy. Like your offensive line is still kind of in shambles at the tackle positions. It's just kind of all your issues are still there. It's just you won a playoff game. It doesn't change anything. You haven't proven anything. Thank you, Jeremy, for gathering my Wayne's World reference.
I saw this and tried not to burst out laughing.
Jeremy, you're my favorite. Here's to you, my friend.
I don't own a gun, let alone many guns.
Are you mental?
Gun rack. What am I going to do with a gun rack?
One of my favorites. There are many times I love our listeners right now. Like that's a good one. Thank you for picking up on that. It doesn't make me feel as old. Like if I said that in front of my kids, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
Dad's scaring us.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God. I don't know what else to take away from this game other than it kind of the way I expected it to when I picked the Packers to win. I expected maybe a bit of a closer game at the end, but the Packers kind of tacked on one. These Bears are kind of the Bears are who we thought they were. It's a limited team that is gonna go as Montgomery goes, and you're crossing your fingers and praying Mitch pulls one out and just plays great against a good team. Like that's who the Bears are.
He doesn't call enough dumb plays.
Exactly. Who's ever calling plays now? It's, they're using Ask Madden or something. I don't know at this point.
Right. he's using a Magic 8 Ball behind the BU poster.
That might be enough to work. I might actually prefer that at this point.
Will this work? Ask again.
Take a timeout. It didn't say what to do.
That's why we've seen that play 7 times.
Yeah, exactly. There's only 8 choices.
So last question here. If you had to choose today, and there's a comment that's actually coming up in perfect timing here from Jeremiah. If the Bears lose against the Saints, regardless of what the final score is, whether they get pantsed or they lose in overtime again to the Saints, does anybody lose their jobs? If you had to put money on it, does anybody in the Bears organization lose their jobs come the following Monday?
Will they or should they?
Will they?
I think Pace is gone only because financially it doesn't, because the Bears are dysfunctional and cheap and cowardly, and they'll keep Nagy for the money. Jeremy, thank you. That's great. That's a good one. Jeremy, thank you so much. That's awesome. But no, to your point is I think Nagy's back only for money purposes because the Bears organization is a joke right now. I think Pace is gone because I think at the end of this year he'll only have 1 year left, and I don't think you can really have a lame duck GM, and I don't think you can extend him given what he's shown you. So I think Pace is gone regardless of a win or loss, to be honest. And I think Nagy's back for at least one more year. Now, I'm not defending that. I'm not saying that should happen. That's what I'm thinking will happen. Because if it should happen, it's a completely different answer.
Yeah, there's several different scenarios that can still play out here, obviously, as we all know. But something tells me that it's going to be a similar situation to what we saw occur last offseason, where there's going to be the scapegoats to what has occurred with the Bears. Most specifically, I don't think Chuck Pagano has a job with the Bears come 2021. I don't feel like that's going to be a thing. I honestly, in a perfect world, would wish Vic Fangio would come back because I don't think he's going to survive the Broncos tomorrow. I could be wrong that he may or may not. But I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to see him back here and coaching the defense again. I know that's a very, very big ask, but I'd say that if anything, it's going to be Chuck Pagano set up as the scapegoat for all the money that's been dumped into the defense, which is, let's be honest, handcuffed the Bears in terms of what they're going to be able to do in free agency for the next couple years here, to fix the shortcomings of the offensive line as well as the quarterback position. That, it's one of those things where you need to get performance out of them, and it just hasn't happened.
Do you think any of the big two between Nagy and Pace are around next year?
See, and that's the thing that kind of has me concerned as well, is there was actually, I believe it was a Brad Biggs article that came out yesterday talking about the fact that no one knows for sure what Ryan Pace's contract terms are. Everybody knows that Matt Nagy is here for 5 years, but it has never been released what Ryan Pace's contract terms are.
Because I was listening to something a week or two ago, and it made it seem like Pace. This is his last year, yeah, and next season's his last, and that's not confirmed.
That there's unknowns regarding, can it line up? Can it be concurrent with what Nagy is? For all we know, that's happened. That it has been extended out so that they can kind of match up.
I hate this organization so much. Like, I truly hate this organization so much. Can we just do a Browns podcast next year? Like, how do we not know what the GM's contract situation is?
But it's true. So if you want to go look at it, it's Brad Biggs wrote about
it. I believe you.
And I believe Danny Parkins with 670 was more than ready to call it out Friday evening as well, just being like, why are we just learning about this now? Like, why is this a thing with so much writing on the line for this organization and what they need to do moving forward, and just how important really for everything that's happening, how important this draft could be if they do choose to draft another quarterback in the first round, which I don't even know if they're going to do that at this point. I'm that lost, depending on whoever the hell they bring back. It's going to be a mess.
That's so disconcerting and so frustrating and so endemic of this organization. Like, it should be very, hey, our GM has this many years left. Like, that should be simple. Like, we can't do these simple stuff right from the top down, and it leaks its way onto the football field. Like, trickle down economics is a thing. It is in the Bears organization because, like, this dysfunction up top trickles down to the football field, and you see it every single season. And that's why the Bears are constantly in flux and up and down, and have made the playoffs 4 times in the last 25 years or whatever it was. Like,
I think it's 5.
Yeah, it's just 5. Right? Woo-hoo. It just.
And yeah. And Jeremy, that's a great question.
Yeah.
The answer should be no.
He shouldn't be.
The GM should be. No. There is no reason a coach that gives you back-to-back 8-8 seasons, which is obviously underwhelming for every single bar that was set, both last year and this year, given how high the bar was last year coming off of the division championship season. Why would they allow that? Like, that's, and I don't want to hear about, it's the playoffs. They still made the playoffs. Again, this year did not exist without a 7 seed. Think about that. A 7 seed. I don't know. Like, it's you can't sit here and be happy with 8-8 seasons. I mean, this is we're talking worse than what Jeff Fisher expects in saying a 9-7 season is mediocre, like, or 7-9, whatever the hell it was.
I mean, I guess besides like the bright spot of Mooney and Montgomery kind of emerging and becoming better, albeit against worse competition, and we kind of danced around this. Montgomery's been better, but against a good team today, he didn't show up, and it's probably not all on him, but he didn't produce the way he's been producing to get us to this point the last few weeks.
Right.
What is this team better at than it was last year when we were 8-8? We're literally the same. I don't feel like we're any better. Our defense, weirdly, is still top 10. Mitch is still kind of who he is. The offensive line, you might have found something, you might not have based upon the results today. I don't know. Jalen Johnson's a bright spot on the opposite corner from Fuller. That's something, I think.
Your running game's better.
Your Roquan Smith you found some consistency this year with him after last year. But it's very ish. I don't like, you can't really so I don't want to hear the playoff argument. Like, this team is who they were last year with this. You need to start making these jumps, and we're not. We're just not.
Right. It's status quo.
Yeah.
Factor, I believe that, so if the Bears do end up beating the Saints and beating the Packers, again, if this happens,
wild card divisional conference still.
Yeah, so it would be some combination of, it could be the Bucks, it could be the Redskins or the Giants, whatever's happening with the NFC East. I don't even know
whatever they're doing.
The Seahawks or the Rams. So that would be that combination there, with whatever ends up happening and whoever gets that far out. So we'll see what ends up happening. Oh yeah, we can't argue this. We have a WR2. Mooney is pretty damn awesome. Let's just put it.
And Jeremy's right. Better, the kicking is better. So that's
the kicking is better. Yes. So we have a kicker. I guess that's a silver lining.
Go Bears.
Knowing the Bears that Cairo Santos is going to leave, and then it's going to be back to
that's actually a great shirt. That's a great shirt idea for the website. Is we have a kicker, and it's just like
here's our building block.
Yeah, Cairo. Exactly. We're the first NFL team ever since like 1942 to be built on the kicker. Think outside the box, guys.
Oh man! All right. Well, I'd say it's a pretty good place to wrap things up. Obviously, we'll have another week of football, Bears fans. Yeah. Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon. Here we are. CBS, Amazon Prime, and yes, Nickelodeon is hosting. I can't, like, it just makes me laugh. But I want to see.
Is it Saturday or Sunday? Because if it's Saturday, dang it! I was hoping it was Saturday for Snick, like a Snick throwback.
Sandwich between all that and Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes. All that Bears game. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
So yeah, I believe 3:15 on or 3:15 Eastern, or because they got the weird times that they do the games on wild card weekend. But two triple headers, so 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and the Bears will have a slime end zone, and God knows what else Nickelodeon has planned for this game, and hopefully a SpongeBob halftime show of sweet victory, as we all were clamoring for last year in the Super Bowl, which obviously did not end up happening. But hey, it's going to be fun. It's entertaining. It's something, I guess, out of the norm in case things get completely out of hand, which could happen, could not happen. Again, this is a Bears team with Nick Foles, mind you, that took the Saints to overtime. So anything can happen. We'll just leave it at that. It can. I'm going to stay positive, kind of. But I don't know anymore. I'm just going to enjoy this while I can. Again, just enjoy this. The fact that this is happening, that they snuck in by falling ass backwards into the playoffs because John Wolford gave you a saving grace in week 17. Again, if they win, great. Just enjoy it as much as humanly possible, and don't set your expectations too high. I think that's the best advice you can be given for what we have going on here in this 2020 season. And the fact we just have football in general, because the fact that we're at week 17 and nothing has gotten canceled is a damn miracle at this point.
I would not have expected this. When we were talking in August and July, I would not have expected it to go this smoothly, for lack of a better term. But it hasn't always been smooth, but that we're here full schedule, it's insane.
Yeah, that it is. That it is. So that's going to do it here for the Hurry Up Recap. Thank you all for watching across Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, no matter where you are. We'll be back with a new episode of the Bearfront Podcast later this week, previewing Bears versus Saints. Playoff wild card weekend football. Still feels weird. Still feels weird saying it, but here we are. So for Nick Vitting, I'm Steven Johnson. Thank you for watching. We will talk to you later this week. Enjoy your week, everybody. And we will talk to you and get ready for another round of whatever the hell the Bears put on the field. So until then, bear down.